Civil War History Series. Who was General Samuel Zook? Acre for Acre, the battle for the Wheatfield on July 2nd, 1863 at Gettysburg was even more deadly than Pickett's charge. About 20,000 men in an en-echelon conflict fought among the fallen stalks of wheat. Even men who bore the rank of general officer were not immune from danger, as many who rode in front of their troops to lead the way were easy targets. One of them was General Zook, a man who hated cowardice, was quick of intellect, and was absolutely without fear. Zook was the oldest child of David and Eleanor Zook, who were Mennonites living in Chester County, Pennsylvania. He was born on March 27, 1821. When Sam was still a young child, the family moved to the farm of his maternal grandparents near Valley Forge. There the Zook children hit the run of the vast old winter camp, with the eldest son conducting army drills with his siblings and arresting them when they failed to execute proper procedure. After an education in the public school system, Samuel enlisted in the local militia, which was what most young men did at the time. By the time of the Civil War commenced, Zook was the superintendent of the Washington and New York Telegraph Company. He was also a lieutenant in the New York City militia. He offered his services along with the rest of the men in the militia. They became the 6th New York Infantry. Zook and his regiment fought in the Peninsular Campaign. He narrowly escaped death at the Battle of Fair Oaks when one of his men captured a Confederate soldier who was aiming his musket at the commander. He missed the Battle of Antietam due to an attack of rheumatism, but was in the fight at Fredericksburg. In temporary command of a brigade, Zook and his troops acted with great boldness on Marye's Heights. Many of his men fell that day, 527 of them, and Zook was among the wounded. General W.S. Hancock was impressed with Zook, recommending him for promotion. Zook received his Brigadier Star in March of 1863. In a letter home, Zook recalled seeing the wake of the field on a cold December night. I never realized before what war was. I never felt so horribly. To see men dashed to pieces by shot and torn to shreds by shells is bad enough, but to walk alone among the slaughtered brave in the still small hours of the night would make the bravest man living blue. During the winter months, as 1862 turned into 1863, Zook worked to drill and perfect his brigade. According to one of his brigade, he was strict, impartial, and rigidly just. Another remembered he had no patience with a man that neglected duty, was blunt, sometimes severe, yet good-hearted. He was absolutely without fear. Zook was officially the commander of his brigade, the 3rd Brigade, 1st Division, 2nd Corps, at Chancellorsville on May 1, 1863. He led them to Gettysburg in his home state for the next great battle. 3 of his regiments hailed from New York, including his original command, the 57th New York. He also led the 57th New York and the 66th New York and the 140th Pennsylvania Infantries. When Zook arrived in Gettysburg, a young private appeared in his tent, asking the general to send his money to his family as he thought he would be killed in the coming fight. Noticing the callow features of the boy, Zook took pity on him and told him to spend the time with the ambulances instead. The boy insisted on staying with the regiment. Zook agreed to take the funds. Soon, Zook, too, felt a terrible foreboding. He sent for the private and told him, "I have the same sensations as you, that I will be killed, and you had better take the money and give it to someone else." The men of Hancock's 2nd Corps, of which Zook and his men were part, stared incredulously from Cemetery Ridge on the afternoon of July 2, 1863, as men from Sickles' 3rd Corps vacated their position on Zook's left and redeployed against orders about a mile to the front. They were soon in terrible trouble. The Confederate forces led by General Longstreet had arrived on Seminary Ridge facing them. They promptly attacked, and Sickles' troops were in the air, alone and without support. General Hancock quickly ordered the 1st Division under General Caldwell into the fight, the 4 brigades including Zook and his intrepid troops. General Zook was in the fight before the rest of his division. He had encountered Major Henry Tremaine, a messenger from General Sickles, on Cemetery Ridge. Zook noted that Tremaine attempted in vain to hide his frantic countenance when the two approached one another. The gravity of the situation was obvious. "Sir," Zook said to Tremaine, "if you will give me the order of General Sickles, I will obey it." Major Tremaine quickly responded that General Sickles wanted him to file his brigade to the right and head for the Wheatfield. General Zook immediately called up his troops. Sickles' men were already rapidly retreating when Zook's brigade arrived on the edge of the Wheatfield, heading toward the Stony Hill. The general, never one to shirk duty, rode to the front of his men. Through the arid smoke and deafening noise and confusion, no orders could be heard or given. Colonel Chapman, who later replaced Zook as commander of the 57th New York, remembered, "It was a severe attack, as men in gray seemed to surround them. As Zook cleared the road, he suddenly reared up in his saddle. He had been shot by a Minié ball on the left side of the stomach, perforating his sword belt and lodging in his spine. His aide caught him and helped him from his horse. Zook said to him, 'It's all up with me, Favell.'" The mortally wounded general was taken to a field hospital nearby. There, a surgeon pronounced what Zook already knew. He would soon die. The following morning, July 3rd, he was moved to a place where he would be more comfortable, to a farmhouse on the Baltimore Pike. The owners had fled. He was cool and composed to the last. About 15 minutes before his death, he turned and quietly asked the doctor, after hearing those who had bid him hope, about how long he had to live. A little while previously, he had requested his aide, Lieutenant Favell, to ascertain and let him know how the action was going. The latter officer reported that the bands had been ordered to the front, the flags were flying, and the enemy was in retreat. "Then I am perfectly satisfied," said the general, "and ready to die." He died within minutes of the news. General Zook's body was placed on a train in Westminster, Maryland, and returned to his grieving parents in Chester County. Not an easy task in the July heat and in the midst of a desolated battlefield. After a funeral at his parents' home, a request came from his friends and colleagues in New York City asking for a funeral for him there. His body arrived by train on July 13th. As if misfortune of the general's death was not enough, the day his corpse arrived in his adopted city, the terrible New York riots ensued. As his funeral began on Tuesday, July 14th, hordes of angry citizens, part of the struggling working class, disrupted it. When his entourage passed through Broadway and the Bowery, the military escort was forced to leave the funeral and attempted to quell the unrest. On the lid of the coffin were the sword, sash, cap, and belt of the deceased general, beside a beautiful wreath of flowers, wrote one journalist. Among the general's pallbearers were the famed Irish Brigade founder, Thomas Mager, and future President Chester A. Arthur, who served as a military leader in the city during the war. The body was returned to Pennsylvania for burial in Montgomery County. It's your history. Learn it, know it, love it.